So today we're in Brussels and we would like to point out to some diverse architectural typologies that are reflecting how different social statuses of people are living in one same neighborhood or area. I live here over here in this area, and I think there is some quality that is often being downplayed or overlooked, where you can detect that the different buildings that are built in one place can somehow sporadically lead and engage, embrace people to have a better social cohesion. And we can start by showing this street over here. This street over here is actually, we can see it now from the side like this. It's actually an avenue, it's a boulevard. In French they call it Avenue de Massonnet, and in Dutch it is Massonnetlaan. So it means a boulevard, an avenue. Usually when you see an avenue, you're always thinking about some big street with big trees and a lot of high and tall buildings with sidewalks, with multiple lanes for different functions and usages. But here what we can see, it is actually two lanes street. You have cars being parked on both sides, and then you have some, let's say, row houses, made predominantly row houses, but also on the other side you have different type of houses. The best thing what we love over here, the first thing that we love over here is that the terminology definitely makes difference. When we say boulevard, we think of big and large street profiles, but we have small street, we have trees on every 10 meters, and then the houses over here, they have front yards.
The fact that this humble but decent urban setup with decentralized location carries the name avenue opens up mental opportunities for the citizens. In this particular context, the term avenue is attached to the urban quality of the street and not to its size or the position in the city. As a consequence to this, the local dwellers of this street are stimulated to develop an engaging cognitive perception for themselves as a lead that lives in an affordable neighborhood, a phenomenon that has positive influence to the everyday citizens and reinforces the bond between the citizen and the city.
This side of this avenue over here, we have typical row houses, Belgian row houses. I don't know if you know, but mostly of these buildings were built as single-family homes, and which means that one family was inhabiting one house. But as the time was going by, with democratization of our cities and with densification, now some of these houses are split into multi-family houses. So it is very interesting that, for example, in this house over here, maybe there is one family living over here, but right next to that, and maybe here as well, but right next to it you have a house that was split among 3-4 families. Actually, I myself live in the same one apartment of these houses, and inside they're nothing fancy or special, but definitely you have different profile of people living inside. For example, on top of us, above us, there is a little grandma living, and once we also had one apartment was rented out to social case family. So in one building block there are people with different profiles. However, on the other side of these row houses over here, we have this kind of duplexes, which we mean on one building lot we have two residential blocks being stacked next to each other, and they're surrounded by big yards, front yard, and a garden on the back side. So again, maybe one of these houses, they have one family living inside, but definitely we can see plenty of these kind of duplexes that kind of look like houses, like one house, like one villa, but on the other hand, inside it is filled up with multiple families. So in a sense, when you see this avenue over here, you see all the time, you see houses, of course, and you think most of them they're owned by one family, but they're filled in a diverse manner. So when you walk over here down this avenue, you can see the front yards, which they're mimicking families living, one family living in a building. It has this, let's say, suburb vibe, but the fact that you can see a lot of row houses stuck next to each other, and on the other side we have multifamily residential blocks which are masked as villas, it's kind of giving you some confusing way. Wait a second. Are there families living here, like middle-income families? Are there rich people living here? Or are these villas of some, for example, you can see this building over here. It really looks like from some neoclassical epoch where some rich bourgeoisie person was living over there, but actually it is also inhabited by different families. I think there's 3 families living there. So this different vibe, it confuses you a little bit, but at the same time it blocks your brain not to be too much, not to have too much prejudices about who lives in what way. And it works and it functions in all directions. The higher income families don't think about too much about who lives next to them, and also the low income families are not obsessed by the fact that, oh my god, am I living next to rich people who are wealthier than me?
This, let's call it camouflage of social statuses, allows ambiguous differentiation between different social layers. It is definitely a challenge to create a community feeling among people with significantly different incomes, but sometimes it is just enough to raise the barriers between them. Creating architecture that doesn't directly nor precisely corresponds with the social status of the owner can reduce the intersocial gaps and potentially bring people closer.
Now, right next to this interesting avenue, little short avenue, we come to another street that is, let's say, more characteristical for Brussels, which is this one over here. So you can see we have just like this dry fronts of the building fronts, nothing special going on. Most of them, they're again row houses. We don't have the front yards, which definitely it's something, it makes this space less attractive, but it also makes this place to have a lower real estate value. And on the other hand, that's maybe a bit more comfortable and invitable, welcoming for low-income families. But we're actually just behind the avenue that we have just showed to you, which, as you can see, it's just this street over here is just 20 steps away from that avenue. But on the other hand, on this street over here, which we just now explained how it might be more invitable for low-income families, we have this typology of neighborhood, which is actually something like a cul-de-sac, something like more of the, like a little gated community, but it's not a gated community, for people who have more wealthier status, and you can actually come here and you can walk around and see it a bit more how it looks. So definitely they have the ramp over here, but also they managed to have these little houses with front yards. Again, some vibe that gives you a little bit more of the suburbia, but in the middle of the city.
This urban typology usually corresponds with wealthier neighborhoods that normally appear as small, safe clusters away from the city. Generally speaking, people who live in these kind of clusters prefer a stable and less dynamic environment, but here we see this settled urban typology in the middle of the everyday Brussels urban fabric.
So as you can see, this neighborhood over here, which loops in one big circle, it definitely is now in the middle of the city. It's right next to the regular urban fabric of Brussels. It has different vibe, like a little village, but it's also another typology that enriches this kind of a neighborhood. Now, you would say, yeah, there is a lot of rich people here living, maybe, I'm not sure, but all these buildings that are surrounding this one block are single family houses, but in the center you have a multi-family home. So again, it's not completely isolated and it's not completely it doesn't work as an island, even though you have these ramps over here. It's trying to make some trust bridges among the the citizens.
As you walk around this neighborhood, you can easily look through the windows of the ground floor at the interior of the homes and in a silent way get familiar with the people who you share the street. You can see humble homes with modest indoor spaces, but you can also see this.
That side over there we can see an art gallery. Now, we're not sure if this is, definitely it's not under gentrification movement over here. We don't know how it's going to be in future years, but what is definitely interesting is that these art galleries over here is just one, and it tells you that probably this building, which on top of it we can see people are living, next to that building over there, which is, it has I think 7 apartments and 5 apartments and 2 studios, which suggests that middle low income families are living. It tells you that they are trying to somehow cohabitate. And now, just like 20 steps away from that art gallery that we have showed to you, we have this building over here. Can you see it? It's like 10 meters wide. Right over here, we have 10 apartments. I mean, we have 10 different living units. Probably most of it studios, small ones, 30 square meters. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10.
This 5-story building, including semi-underground level and attic, has floor plan with about 90 square meters, and it fits 10 different units. If we zoom out, we will see that this urban block that is consisted out of predominantly single-family homes, it has 5 other blocks with high density and limited surface. We don't say that this model of urban mixity is particularly good or bad, but definitely it reflects the demographical diversity that inhabits one same urban block.
So another interesting phenomenon is that right now we are walking around a big park, and all of these houses are organized around this big park, which is always attractive. Most likely, whenever you have these big parks, in the first front line around the park, you have the best houses, the villas, where wealthier people would like to have their living unit, their home there. But also, part of this park is this here beautiful sports stadium, which is actually a football arena. This football arena, it's quite noisy during the weekends, and because of that, the real estate value from this street over here, it's kind of staying constantly lower because not many people would like to move in next to a loud stadium. But that's why this arena, this football stadium over here, works like some anti-gentrification stadium, where it doesn't allow rich people to move in and occupy these places, and often remains a good deal for low-income families because, yeah, during the weekend maybe it's a bit louder, but the rest of the days of the week we have a very beautiful area with nice park and plenty of spaces where your children can play. And then, not very far, right over there, we have seen that building with 10 apartments, with 10 different families living in one building. You have this sort of, okay, this is abandoned villa, abandoned house, but you have alone standing houses, single family houses, which are actually quite unique. They have beautiful, they're built in diverse, nice styles, from arts and crafts, mixture with art decor, something like that. At the same time, some of these buildings are so nice that you can see over here that some of them, they used to be also embassies or council expositures. And you can see, of course, the beautiful trees, and they are actually the houses, those houses that are enjoying the direct impact from the park over here. So that's the thing, another thing that is very interesting. Okay, these houses over here, you can see they have front yards, but they don't actually have garages. They don't have driveways for garages to be, for cars to be parking. So most of them, they are keeping their cars on front of the houses. Now, it's quite interesting to see that even though these people are living in nice houses over here, they don't have some very expensive cars, as you can see. So Probably because back in the times in the 50s and the 60s there was a big wave of people moving out from Brussels, because in that time that was the peak of the moment of the time when people were going in the suburbia. That was a trend there then, because houses were more cheaper, and that was the thinking that okay, we are moving out of the city to a fresher air. But there were some people who managed to occupy and to build houses in the city. Those people maybe were not that rich, but however, now when we see at these houses, they look like wealthy people are living inside. Maybe they are, but anyway, they're not aggressive, and they're not like, people are not building some resistance towards the people living here. On the other way, when you're staying here, you feel some kind of, not cohesion necessarily, but it's just, yeah, people are just trying to live their life together, which we find it as a quality, of course, it's a quality. And only 3 minutes away, actually 5 minutes away from those villas that we have seen, the nice wealthy villas, we have this, actually big residential social housing blocks. Yes, so we have this one is being renovated right now, there is another one over there, and there is actually multiple sets, blocks of social housing blocks. So as you can see, I'm not trying to romanticize this kind of mixity. I'm not saying that's like necessarily good, or that's like this is the thing we have to strive in our cities, it has to be like this, but it's just definitely an interesting case. And right over there we have the social blocks, and then there's another little street with beautiful little nice row houses.
Well, we're not going to be checking the whole street, but this footage tells you a lot. A single-family home in a specific architectural style that is relatively expensive to be maintained, right next to a multi-family building with quite pragmatic layout and materialization.
And right now we're located on the other side of those villas that we have shown before, on the other side of the park. And here on the other side of the park, on this front of the park, we have big residential blocks or multi-family housing. Most of these blocks over here, what you see, are predominantly populated by families, or we can say that this demographics like seniors, like a little bit people who are a little bit older or retired people. So at the same time, while this park over here is great for children playing, you also have a bit older people who at the same time can also go in the park, and there you have mixture of generations, which is a great thing, right?
And as always, we will quickly wrap up this video with one of our illustrations. We find it extremely important that the residential areas and the general urban fabric of our cities is being developed around an entity that resembles a common good for everyone. This can be a tricky one because it is often a subjective matter, but for example, a nice park with refreshing nature, it's really something that everyone needs. It may sound naive, but this principle is rarely respected in our cities. Therefore, as you can see on the illustration, we have sketched a big park just as the study case from today, and around it we have sketched colorful buildings, which is a metaphor, a direct metaphor for a diverse architecture. In other words, around these parks it is important that we organize urban fabric consisted out of different scales, styles and typologies that will be attractive for different groups of people. This diversity should be developed in a direct proximity, and therefore it should follow a consistent level of aesthetical quality and decent common infrastructure. Finally, there should be bigger number of high-density buildings, but also scalable and flexible solutions for reconfiguring the low-density units. In that way, we may create dynamic environments that will offer resilient modes of living backed up by diverse real estate market. This gives sense of stability and degree of redundancy to the vulnerable groups of people, which are actually the factor of safety, something that wealthier people really care about. Probably there are different formulas for social cohesion, but these are just good strategies for a starting point. Thank you very much for staying with us. Hopefully you extracted some good ideas and points from this, and see you in the next episode of Stripping Architecture. Bye bye!